Commander Zektar sat on the cold metal chair in the medical room of the giant warship Void's Edge. His 4 purple arms would not stop shaking. The medicine the doctors gave him was not helping. His body was covered in hard purple plates like armor, but many of them had black burn marks from the recent fight. Some were completely broken off. The door opened with a soft hiss. Admiral Korthval walked in. He was much bigger than Zektar, and his purple skin was darker. Behind him came Dr. Velnan, the ship's mind doctor. She had gentle eyes, but Zektar could see worry in them. "Commander, we need to know what happened down there," Admiral Korthval said. His voice was strong and commanding. He had been in many battles but never fought humans before. "Tell us about the human colony called New Eden." Zektar's big round eyes moved back and forth. He looked scared. For 3 years he had been the best soldier in the Vorthak army. He had defeated 12 different alien races across 4 star systems. He had won every battle he fought in. Other soldiers looked up to him, but now he looked like a broken warrior. "Sir, I don't know if I can explain it properly," Zektar said. His voice was quiet and weak. "The humans, they are not like any enemy we have faced before." Dr. Velnan sat down across from him. "Take your time. Start from the beginning. What made this battle different?" Zektar closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "We thought it would be easy. Our intelligence report said New Eden was just a farming world. They grew food for other human colonies. The population was only about 50,000 people. Most of them were families with children. There was no real army there, just a small group of local guards." Admiral Korthval nodded. "That matches our information. Continue." "We started with the usual orbital bombing," Zektar said. "We hit their power stations, their communication towers, and their government buildings. Everything went dark just like it should. We waited 6 hours, and then sent down our landing ships with 3,000 soldiers." The Admiral leaned forward. 3,000 elite Vorthak warriors against 50,000 farmers and their families. What could go wrong? Zektar's hands started shaking again. "Everything, sir, everything went wrong." Dr. Velnan made notes on her tablet. "What happened when your forces landed?" "At first it seemed normal. We landed in 3 different places around their main city. The plan was simple: surround the humans, demand their surrender, and then process them for relocation." "Standard procedure." Zektar paused and stared at the floor. "But when we got to the city, it was empty. All the buildings were there, but no people, no bodies either. It was like they had just disappeared." "Disappeared how?" Admiral Korthval asked. "We searched every building, every basement, every storage room. Nothing, no humans anywhere. Our scanners showed that people had been there recently, but now they were gone. Some of my soldiers thought maybe they had escaped to other planets." Dr. Velnan looked up from her notes. "But that's not what happened, is it?" Zektar shook his head slowly. "No, they hadn't run away. They were still there, waiting for us." The room became very quiet. Admiral Korthval and Dr. Velnan waited for Zektar to continue. "On the 2nd day, we spread out to search the farmland around the city. The humans had many farms with big fields of grain and vegetables, perfect places to hide. I took 50 soldiers with me to check the western farms." Zektar stood up and started walking around the small room. "The farms looked abandoned. We could see that someone had been working there recently. The plants were healthy and well cared for, but still no people." "Then what happened?" Dr. Velnan asked gently. "We were walking through a field of tall corn, plants. The stalks were higher than our heads, good cover for enemies, so we were being careful. I had my soldiers spread out in a standard search formation." Zektar stopped walking and looked directly at Admiral Korthval. "Sir, in all my years of fighting, I have never seen anything like what happened next." The Admiral shifted in his chair. "Go on." "The attack came from below, from under the ground. The humans had dug tunnels, long tunnels that connected different parts of their farms. They could move under our feet without us knowing." Zektar's voice started getting louder. "Sergeant Thekmore was walking about 20 meters in front of me. Suddenly the ground opened up beneath him and a human soldier popped out. But this wasn't a real soldier. It was just a man, maybe 40 years old, wearing farmer clothes and carrying an old hunting rifle. Dr. Velnan wrote quickly. What did this human do? He shot Thekmore in the head with one bullet and then disappeared back into the ground before any of us could react. It happened so fast. 1 second Thekmore was there, the next second he was dead and his killer was gone. Admiral Korthval frowned. One human with a primitive weapon killed a Vorthak sergeant? Yes, sir. But that wasn't the worst part. Zektar sat back down. We ran to where Thekmore fell. We wanted to get his body and his weapon. But before we could reach him, more humans came out of the tunnels. How many? The Admiral asked. Maybe 10 or 12, men and women. Some were young, some were old. None of them wore military uniforms. They looked like farmers and shopkeepers and teachers, but they moved like trained fighters. Zektar rubbed his face with 2 of his hands. They didn't run away after killing Thekmore. Instead, they fought us. With old rifles and hunting weapons, they fought Vorthak soldiers with energy weapons and battle armor. Dr. Velnan looked confused. That seems like suicide. Why would civilians attack superior forces? That's what I thought too. But they weren't trying to win the fight. They were trying to get Thekmore's weapon. One of the humans, a woman with brown hair, crawled through our gunfire to reach his body. She took his energy rifle and disappeared, back into the tunnels. Admiral Korthval stood up angrily. You let primitive humans steal Vorthak military equipment? Zektar looked up at him. Sir, that woman crawled 200 meters through enemy fire to get that weapon. She knew she might die, but she did it anyway. I have never seen courage like that. It frightened me more than any enemy I have ever faced. The room became quiet again. Dr. Velnan broke the silence. What happened after that? We tried to follow them into the tunnels, but they were too small for us. Humans are smaller than Vorthak. They could move through spaces where we couldn't fit. So we decided to wait for them to come out. Zektar laughed, but it was not a happy sound. We waited for 6 hours. When they finally appeared again, they were in a completely different location, 3 kilometers away. And the woman who stole Thekmore's weapon was teaching other humans how to use it. Admiral Korthval and Dr. Velnan looked at each other with worry. They were beginning to understand that this battle had been very different from anything the Vorthak military had experienced before. That was just the first day, Zektar said quietly. It got much worse after that. Dr. Velnan leaned forward in her chair. Commander, tell us what happened on the second day. Zektar's purple skin grew darker. The second day was when I realized we were not fighting a normal enemy. The humans had vanished completely from the surface, but they were still there, watching us, learning about us. Admiral Korthval crossed his arms. How could farmers watch trained soldiers without being seen? They knew their planet better than we did, Zektar said. Every hill, every tree, every building. They had lived there for many years. We were strangers in their home. Zektar stood up and walked to the small window in the medical room. He looked out at the stars. I split my remaining soldiers into 3 groups. Each group had orders to search a different area. I thought if we spread out, we could cover more ground and find the humans faster. That sounds like good strategy, Dr. Velnan said. Zektar turned around. It was exactly what the humans wanted us to do. They were waiting for us to split up. When we were in smaller groups, they could attack us. The commander sat back down. The first attack happened to Lieutenant Kexadal's group. 20 soldiers were searching an area with many small farms. They found fresh food on tables and clothes hanging on lines, signs that humans had been there recently. Admiral Korthval nodded. Go on. Then the shooting started. But not from one place. The humans were shooting from many different places at the same time. Some shots came from inside buildings. Some came from behind trees. Some came from holes in the ground. Zektar's 4 hands moved as he talked. Lieutenant Kexdal tried to organize his soldiers, but every time they moved to attack one position, shots came from somewhere else. The humans were moving through their tunnel system, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Dr. Velnan looked worried. How many humans were attacking? We couldn't tell. Maybe 10, maybe 20. But they were coordinated, working together like they had been planning this for a long time. Zektar paused and took a drink of water. The worst part was their weapons. They had old rifles that shouldn't have been able to hurt us. Our battle armor is designed to stop most kinetic projectiles, but somehow the humans knew exactly where to aim. What do you mean? Admiral Korthval asked. They aimed for the joints in our armor, the places where the plates connect. A human named Jake Peterson was their best shooter. He could hit a target from 800 meters away. Every shot he fired hit exactly where our armor was weakest. The room became quiet. Admiral Korthval had never heard of enemies studying Vorthak armor so carefully. After 2 hours of fighting, Lieutenant Kekstal called for help. He had lost 6 soldiers and couldn't find the humans to fight back. I took my group to assist him. Zektar walked around the room again. When we arrived, the shooting stopped. The humans disappeared again. We found Kekstal's soldiers hiding behind farm equipment. They were scared and confused. Dr. Velnin wrote in her notes. What did you do then? We tried to follow the humans. We found some of their tunnels and threw grenades into them, but the tunnels were deeper than we thought. Our explosives didn't reach far enough. Zektar sat down heavily. Then we made a big mistake. We thought if we could catch one human, we could make them tell us where the others were hiding. So we set a trap. Admiral Korthval leaned forward. What kind of trap? We put some of our emergency food supplies in an open area. We thought hungry humans would come to take the food and we could capture them. 10 of my best soldiers hid nearby to wait. Zektar shook his head slowly. The humans did come for the food, but they knew it was a trap. A woman named Lisa Crawford approached the food very carefully. She moved like a trained soldier, not like a farmer. Did your soldiers capture her? Dr. Velnin asked. No. When they tried to surround her, more humans appeared. They came from directions we weren't watching. They had weapons we had never seen before. Zektar's voice got quieter. The humans had taken apart some of our equipment from the soldiers they killed. They built new weapons using parts from our technology and their own materials. Admiral Korthval stood up quickly. They reverse-engineered Vorthak technology? Yes, sir. Lisa Crawford was carrying a weapon that fired our energy blasts, but it was smaller and easier to use than our standard rifles. A human named Tony Rivera had figured out how to make it work. The Admiral began pacing around the room. How long did this take them? Less than 2 days, sir. They captured our equipment on day 1 and had working copies by day 3. Dr. Velnin looked shocked. That's impossible. It takes our engineers months to develop new weapons. I thought so too, Zektar said. But I saw it with my own eyes. The humans were not just using our weapons, they were improving them. Zektar continued his story. The fight at the food trap lasted 4 hours. We had 10 soldiers in good positions with heavy weapons. The humans had maybe 6 people with mixed equipment. We should have won easily. But you didn't, Admiral Korthval said. No, sir. The humans used tactics we had never seen before. They would attack from one direction to get our attention, then hit us from behind. When we moved to defend the back, they attacked from the sides. Zektar rubbed his temples. But the strangest thing was how they worked together. They didn't need to talk to each other. They seemed to know what the others were thinking. Like they were connected by invisible threads. Dr. Velnin looked up from her notes. What do you mean? When one human moved, the others moved to support them without being told. When one human was in danger, another human would risk their own life to help. I have never seen such coordination between soldiers. Zektar walked back to the window. During the fight, one of my soldiers shot Lisa Crawford in the leg. She fell down and couldn't move. Any normal enemy would leave her behind to save themselves. What did the humans do? Admiral Korthval asked. 2 humans immediately stopped fighting and ran to help her. They carried her away while the other humans provided covering fire. They risked the entire mission to save one wounded person. The room was quiet for a moment. In Vorthak military culture, wounded soldiers were left behind if they slowed down the mission. We lost 4 more soldiers in that fight. Zektar continued. The humans took their weapons and equipment and disappeared again. But this time they left us a message. Dr. Velnan looked curious. What kind of message? They had learned enough of our language to write simple words. The message said, "Take your wounded and leave. We don't want to kill you, but we will if you stay." Admiral Korthval stopped pacing. They offered you mercy? Yes, sir. After defeating us in battle, they gave us a chance to retreat. I had never encountered an enemy that showed mercy to Vorthak. Soldiers. Zektar sat down again. That message scared me more than their weapons or their tactics. An enemy that kills you is predictable. An enemy that offers mercy is dangerous in ways we don't understand. Dr. Velnan put down her tablet. What happened next? I decided to regroup all my forces. Fighting the humans in small groups was not working. I called Lieutenant Kexdal and Sergeant Mortek to bring their soldiers back to our landing zone. Zektar's voice became very quiet. That was when we discovered the humans had been watching us the entire time. They knew exactly where our landing zone was. They knew how many soldiers we had. They knew our weapons and our tactics. Admiral Korthval felt a chill run down his spine. How do you know this? Because when my soldiers tried to return to the landing zone, the humans were waiting for them. They had set up their own ambushes along every route back to our ships. The commander looked at both officers. By the end of day 2, I had lost 20 soldiers. The humans had lost maybe 3 or 4, and they were getting stronger while we were getting weaker. Dr. Velnan wrote quickly. What made you realize the situation was becoming desperate? Zektar closed his eyes. That night I received a communication from the human leader, a man named Colonel Ben Morrison. He spoke our language perfectly. How did he learn Vorthak so quickly? Admiral Korthval demanded. I don't know, sir. But he called me by name and rank. He knew details about our mission that should have been classified. And then he said something that still haunts me. The room became completely silent. He said, Commander Zektar, you are fighting for orders from commanders who are not here. We are fighting for our children who are hiding in the tunnels below your feet. Which of us do you think will fight harder? Admiral Korthval and Dr. Velnan looked at each other with growing concern. They were beginning to understand that their military had encountered something far more dangerous than simple farmers with guns. Admiral Korthval was pacing back and forth in the small medical room. Commander, you're telling me that farmers learned our language and our military tactics in just 2 days? Zektar nodded slowly. Yes, sir. But that was just the beginning. On the 3rd day, things got much worse. Dr. Velnan looked up from her notes. What happened on day 3? I gathered all my remaining soldiers at the landing zone. We had lost almost 30 soldiers by then. I decided we needed to stay together and fight as one unit instead of splitting up. Zektar stood and walked to the corner of the room. The landing zone was on top of a small hill. Good view in all directions. Strong defensive position. We set up barriers and heavy weapons. I thought we would be safe there. Admiral Korthval stopped pacing. That sounds like sound military strategy. It would have worked against any normal enemy, Zektar said. But the humans were not normal. They didn't attack our position directly. Instead, they did something we never expected. Dr. Velnan leaned forward. What did they do? They sent a child to talk to us. The room became very quiet. Admiral Korthval and Dr. Velnan looked at each other with surprise. A human child, maybe 12 years old, walked up the hill toward our position. She was carrying a white cloth, on a stick, the universal sign for peace talks. Zektar sat down and put his head in his hands. Her name was Amy Foster. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. She looked so small and innocent, but when she spoke to us, she sounded like a trained diplomat. What did she say? Dr. Velnan asked gently. She said her people wanted to make a deal with us. They would give us food and medical supplies if we agreed to leave their planet peacefully. Admiral Korthval looked angry. A child was trying to negotiate with Vorthak military forces? Yes, sir. And she was good at it. She spoke our language perfectly. She knew about our supply problems and our wounded soldiers. She even knew the names of some of my officers. Zektar lifted his head and looked at the Admiral. But the strangest part was that she seemed genuinely concerned about our welfare. She asked if our wounded soldiers were getting proper medical care. Dr. Velnan wrote quickly. What did you tell her? I told her we don't negotiate with enemies. I ordered her to leave or we would shoot, but she didn't run away. She just stood there looking sad. Zektar's voice became very quiet. Then she said something that still confuses me. She said, "My grandmother told me that even enemies deserve mercy. We don't want to hurt you anymore, but we will protect our families if we have to." Admiral Korthval sat down heavily. What happened next? I sent the child away without agreeing to anything, but her visit had shaken my soldiers. They were talking among themselves about what she had said. Some of them were beginning to question why we were fighting these humans. Zektar got up and started walking around the room again. That afternoon, the humans proved they could have attacked our position anytime they wanted. 3 of their fighters appeared on the ridge above us. They were close enough to throw grenades into our camp. Did they attack? Dr. Velnan asked. No. They just waved at us and disappeared. It was a message. They were showing us they could kill us whenever they chose to. Admiral Korthval was getting more frustrated. Why didn't you call for orbital support, bomb their positions from space? I tried, sir, but the humans had captured some of our communication equipment. They were jamming our signals to the fleet. We couldn't call for help. Zektar sat down again. That night, something happened that changed everything. One of my soldiers, Corporal Vexnor, was badly wounded during a patrol. He had been shot in the chest and was bleeding heavily. Dr. Velnan looked concerned. What did you do? Our medic was trying to save him, but he didn't have the right equipment. Vexnor was going to die. We all knew it. Zektar's hands started shaking again. Then the humans did something impossible. Dr. Helen Warner, their colony doctor, came to our camp under a flag of peace. Admiral Korthval leaned forward. Their doctor came to help your soldier? Yes, sir. She was an older woman, maybe 60 years old. She brought medical supplies and offered to save Vexner's life. The room was completely silent. In all of Vorthak military history, no enemy had ever offered medical aid to wounded Vorthak soldiers. I didn't trust her. Zektar continued. I thought it was a trick. Maybe she wanted to poison him or gather intelligence about our biology. Doctor, Velnan asked quietly, what did you decide? Vexnor was dying. Our medic said he had maybe 1 hour to live. I decided to let the human doctor try to save him. Zektar's voice became even quieter. Dr. Warner worked on Vexnor for 3 hours. She used human medical techniques combined with our own supplies. She didn't ask for anything in return. She just worked to save his life. Admiral Korthval was staring at Zektar with disbelief. Did she succeed? Yes, sir. Vexnor lived. Doctor, Warner stabilized his condition and taught our medic how to care for him properly. Then she left without asking for anything. Dr. Velnan put down her tablet. How did your soldiers react to this? They were confused and frightened. We had been taught that humans were primitive and cruel, but this human doctor had risked her own life to save one of us. Zektar stood up and walked to the window again. The next morning, more wounded humans came to our camp, but they weren't attacking. They were asking for medical help. Admiral Korthval looked confused. What do you mean? The fighting had wounded some of their people too. Dr. Warner had told them that our medic might be able to help with injuries, that human medicine couldn't treat. Zektar turned around to face the others. So there we were, Vorthak soldiers and human civilians treating each other's wounded in the middle of a war zone. It was the most bizarre thing I had ever experienced. Doctor, Velnan was writing furiously. How long did this medical cooperation continue? 2 days. For 2 days there was no fighting. Humans and Vorthak worked together to save lives. I saw my soldiers sharing food with human children. I saw human adults teaching Vorthak soldiers how to repair damaged equipment. Admiral Korthval stood up angrily. This is unacceptable. You allowed the enemy to gain intelligence about our capabilities. Yes, sir. But they were sharing their knowledge with us too. A human engineer named Rick Bailey showed us how to fix our damaged landing craft using local materials. Zektar sat down and looked directly at the Admiral. Sir, for those 2 days I forgot we were supposed to be enemies. The humans treated us like guests instead of invaders. Dr. Velnan asked, "What ended this peaceful period?" Orders from Colonel Morrison. He sent word that the truce was over. The humans needed us to make a final decision. Either leave their planet peacefully or face a final battle. Zektar's voice became sad. I wanted to leave. My soldiers wanted to leave. But I had orders from the Fleet Command. We were supposed to conquer this planet, not negotiate with its inhabitants. Admiral Korthval crossed his arms. So you chose to fight? Yes, sir. I told Colonel Morrison that we couldn't leave without completing our mission. I gave him 1 day to surrender unconditionally. Dr. Velnan looked worried. How did he respond? He was disappointed but not surprised. He said he understood that I was following orders just like he was protecting his people. Then he said something that still haunts me. The room became quiet again. He said, "Commander, tomorrow we will fight each other with everything we have. But tonight, let our doctors finish treating the wounded. Let our children say goodbye to the friends they made. War should not erase kindness." Zektar put his head in his hands. That night I watched human children giving small gifts to my soldiers. Drawings they had made. Flowers they had picked. Simple things, but my soldiers treasured them. Admiral Korthval was pacing again. And then? The next morning, everything changed. The humans showed us what they were really capable of when they stopped holding back. Dr. Velnan looked up. What do you mean? During the truce, the humans had been studying us, learning our weaknesses, preparing for the final battle. When the fighting started again, it was like facing a completely different enemy. Zektar stood up shakily. They hit us with everything they had. Not just the fighters we had been dealing with, but the entire population. Old people, teenagers, even some of the children we had befriended. Admiral Korthval stopped pacing. The whole colony attacked you? Yes, sir. 200 humans against my remaining 800 soldiers. It should have been an easy victory for us. Zektar looked out the window at the stars. But by sunset that day, I was ordering a retreat. To our ships. The humans had beaten us completely. Dr. Velnan set down her tablet. How is that possible? Because they weren't just fighting for victory, Doctor. They were fighting for survival. And there is no force in the universe more dangerous than a human fighting to protect their family. Admiral Korthval slammed his fist on the table. Impossible. 800 elite Vorthak soldiers cannot be defeated by 200 human farmers. You must be exaggerating. Zektar looked up at the Admiral with tired eyes. Sir, I wish I was making this up. But every word is true. The humans proved that numbers and technology don't always win battles. Dr. Velnan leaned forward. Tell us exactly what happened in that final battle. Zektar took a deep breath. It started at dawn. Colonel Morrison sent me one last message. He said, Commander, we hoped you would choose peace. Since you have chosen war, we will show you why humans have survived on this dangerous planet for 40 years. The commander stood up and walked to the center of the room. The attack came from all directions at once, not just from the tunnels, this time. The humans came from the sky, from the ground, from places we thought were empty. Admiral Korthval crossed his arms. Explain. They had built flying machines using parts from their farm equipment and our captured technology. Simple aircraft that could carry 2 or 3 people. They used these to drop explosives on our positions. Zektar's hands moved as he described the battle. But the air attack was just a distraction. While we were shooting at their aircraft, human fighters emerged from hidden positions all around our camp. Dr. Velnan wrote quickly, How many fighters? At first, maybe 50. But as the battle continued, more humans kept appearing. Old people who could barely walk were carrying ammunition to the younger fighters. Children were running messages between different groups. Zektar sat down heavily. I realized then that we weren't fighting an army. We were fighting an entire society that had decided to resist us. Admiral Korthval began pacing. What weapons were they using? Everything they could find. Old hunting rifles, farm tools turned into weapons, explosives made from fertilizer and fuel, but also our own weapons that they had captured and improved. The commander's voice became quieter. A teenager named Kevin Brown had figured out how to make our energy weapons more powerful. His modifications made them twice as effective as the original designs. Dr. Velnan looked up from her notes. A human child improved Vorthak military technology? Yes, Doctor. And he wasn't the only one. The humans had been working together during the truce to study everything we had. They understood our equipment better than some of my own soldiers. Zektar stood up and began walking around the room. But the worst part wasn't their weapons or their tactics. It was their willingness to sacrifice themselves. Admiral Korthval stopped pacing. What do you mean? When one of my heavy weapon positions was causing too much damage, an old woman named Betty Clark ran straight at it carrying a bomb made from farming chemicals. She knew she wouldn't survive, but she did it anyway to protect the other humans. The room became very quiet. Suicide attacks were not unknown in warfare, but the casual way Zektar described it was disturbing. That wasn't an isolated incident, Zektar continued. Throughout the battle, humans threw themselves into danger to save each other. I saw a man named George Hayes shield 3 children with his own body when one of our grenades exploded nearby. Dr. Velnan asked quietly, Did he survive? No, Doctor, but the children lived. And when George Hayes died, those children picked up his weapon and continued fighting. They weren't even teenagers, but they fought like seasoned warriors. Admiral Korthval sat down slowly. How long did this battle last? 6 hours of continuous fighting, but it felt like 6 days. Every time we thought we had gained an advantage, the humans would adapt and counter our tactics. Zektar walked to the window. The turning point came when they captured our communications center. A group led by Rick Bailey and Tony Rivera managed to get inside our most protected position. The Admiral leaned forward. How? They used our own tunnel digging equipment against us. During the truce, Bailey had learned how our excavation tools worked. He used them to dig directly under our defenses. Zektar turned back to face the others. Once they controlled our communications, they could hear all our tactical discussions. They knew our plans before we could execute them. Dr. Velnan looked worried. What did you do? I tried to organize a counterattack to retake the communications center, but every time we moved soldiers toward it, the humans would attack somewhere else. They forced us to spread our forces thin. Zektar sat down again. That's when I realized we were fighting someone who understood strategy better than our military academy teaches. Colonel Morrison was coordinating multiple attacks while making it look like random chaos. Admiral Korthval was quiet for a moment. What finally made you retreat? The humans captured our landing ships. The Admiral stood up quickly. What? Amy Foster, the same child who had tried to negotiate peace, led a group of teenagers in an attack on our spacecraft. They didn't destroy the ships, they captured them intact. Zektar's voice became very quiet. When I saw human children operating Vorthak military vehicles, I knew we had lost completely. Not just the battle, but any hope of understanding these people. Dr. Velnan put down her tablet. What happened next? I sent a surrender message to Colonel Morrison. I told him we were ready to leave the planet and would not return. Admiral Korthval looked shocked. You surrendered to farmers? Yes, sir. Because they weren't just farmers anymore. They had become something else during the fight. Something more dangerous than any military force I had ever faced. Zektar walked to the center of the room. Colonel Morrison's response was the most terrifying thing of all. He accepted our surrender and then offered to help us repair our damaged ship so we could leave safely. The room was completely silent. Dr. Velnan and Admiral Korthval looked at each other with growing concern. He gave us medical supplies for our wounded soldiers. He provided food for our journey back to the fleet. And he personally apologized for the necessity of fighting us. Admiral Korthval sat down slowly. He apologized? Yes, sir. He said he was sorry that his people had to hurt us, but protecting their families was more important than avoiding violence. Zektar looked directly at the Admiral. As we were leaving, Dr. Warner came to check on our wounded one more time. She gave us medicine that would help them heal during the journey home. Dr. Velnan was writing furiously. How many casualties did you suffer? We lost over 400 soldiers, more than half my force. The humans lost about 80 people, including the elderly and children who chose to fight. Admiral Korthval was staring at the floor. 400 trained soldiers defeated by 80 civilians. But that's not the worst part, sir, Zektar said quietly. The worst part is what Colonel Morrison told me as we were departing. The room became very quiet again. He said, "Commander, you fought well and with honor, but you were fighting for orders from people far away. We were fighting for our children sleeping in the rooms next to ours. Remember that difference when you write your report." Zektar sat down and put his head in his hands. Then he said something that still keeps me awake at night. Dr. Velnin asked gently, "What did he say?" He said, "The people you fought here were teachers and farmers and shopkeepers. We have no real military on this planet. If you want to see what human soldiers are actually like, I suggest you avoid our military worlds." Admiral Korthval was very pale. "Are you saying that wasn't even their army?" "No, sir. According to Morrison, there are human worlds where everyone is a trained soldier, planets where they do nothing but prepare for war." Zektar looked up at both officers. "We were defeated by school teachers and grandmothers, sir. Imagine what would happen if we faced their actual warriors." Dr. Velnin closed her notebook. "What is your recommendation, Commander?" "Avoid human space completely. Mark all their systems as forbidden territory. The humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They don't fight for conquest or glory. They fight for each other." Admiral Korthval stood up slowly. "Are you suggesting the Vorthak Empire retreat from an entire region of space because of one bad battle?" Zektar looked directly at him. "Sir, I am suggesting we avoid a war we cannot win. The humans showed us mercy when they could have destroyed us completely. If we return with a larger fleet, they might not be so generous next time." The commander walked to the door. "The humans we fought were not soldiers, Admiral. They were just people protecting their families, and they defeated us easily." Zektar stopped and turned back. "The next time you see Earth or any human colony on a star map, remember this. Somewhere on those worlds there are children like Amy Foster learning to negotiate. There are doctors like Helen Warner learning to heal. And there are engineers like Rick Bailey learning to build." He opened the door, but most importantly, there are people like Colonel Morrison learning to lead. And when those children grow up, they will be more dangerous than anything the galaxy has ever seen. As Zektar left the medical room, Admiral Korthval and Dr. Velnin sat in silence, staring out at the stars and wondering what other surprises humanity might have waiting for them.